now tour or anything like that. I'm the newest developer advocate on the team, so I'm really excited to be doing my first ever codeLive. Cool. So before we get started, I just want to go ahead and remind you all that Salesforce is a publicly traded company. And so you should always make your purchasing decisions based on features that are generally available and not any forward-looking features that I might discuss here today. The second thing I want to remind you is that you can actually do a lot of the things that I'm going to be doing today. So today I am going to be walking through a scenario where we use generative AI to essentially populate case objects from, say, support agents who might be working with customers. We're going to essentially take the details that we have of a case object, and we're going to use a prompt builder and GPT models to essentially take those details and actually fill out some of the missing fields. Now, why would we want to do this? Well, if you've ever worked in support, and I've worked in support, one of the things that's really, really important is to be able to take cases and actually summarize them so that other people can refer to them. They can get a quick understanding of them. And another thing that's really important is just being able to ensure that cases are labeled correctly. And so we're going to use AI to do that. And that's going to allow, you know, people who might do reporting on or analysis on cases to be able to say, hey, you know, certain cases that are categorized one way take longer to handle or longer to resolve or have lower customer satisfaction rates, what have you. But in this particular scenario, we're just going to be using cases for now. And we're going to be using generative AI to solve it. And of course, we're doing a support scenario, but you could do it with a variety of different scenarios. Okay, so I want to quickly show you how to get access to the org that I am going to be using for the live stream today. Now, if you are learning or using Salesforce, I am sure you have used Trailhead before. I want to show you a particular trail that gives you access to an org so that you can test out and try things with Prompt Builder as well as Copilot, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up my screen here. Alrighty. So if you go to Trailhead, you can get access to an Einstein playground. Now, this Einstein playground is part of the Prompt Builder Quick Start Trail. Specifically, you'll want to go to the that is called Get Started with Prompt Builder. And this will allow you to create an org that you can use to explore generative AI. It does expire. So you'll notice that it has this little tag here that says that this thing will expire. It generally lasts for a few weeks, more than enough time to do anything that I show you here today. Now, what we're going to be working on today, again, is the Einstein Playground org that's created inside of Trailhead. Now, if you go to this org, once you have it set up, it has a lot of different test data that you can use. In our case, we're going to be interested in exploring case objects. And I just want to quickly show you the cases that we have here and the cases that we're kind of going to work on and use to build our integration. Okay, cool. So we have a few open cases in this org that we can use to build and test with. And so if we click on this case right here, you'll notice that we have some details from what might be like an agent who has quickly wrote up a decision or just like the subject of the case. And what we are going to try and do today is build an integration that can take in some of these details from this case, the details from this particular case record, and then generate a quick summary of this case, as well as a type for the case, as well as a case reason. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be summarizing the case, and we're also going to be categorizing and classifying the case. That's really what we're going to be doing today. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we'll want to do is just turn on Einstein. So to do that, we're going to want to go to developer setup. So you can, two ways to get to it, of course. You can click on setup. In my case, I already had it open, but I'll click on setup, just so we go through all the different steps. And I'll also be monitoring the chat. So let me see here. All right, sweet, sweet. So also, since I can see your chats, I see them flowing in. Let me know where you are actually, um, where you're watching from. For me, I am in Seattle, Washington, personally. Let me see if I can do a pic. Okay, perfect. I'm in Seattle, Washington. Where's everybody else? I'm curious. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to turn on Einstein. So first thing you'll want to do is just type in Einstein setup. Now, this is a quick tip. You can always tell whether or not you have access to Einstein generative AI for the most part, just by typing in Einstein setup. You don't see Einstein setup, you can't use Einstein. But this is an org that has Einstein. So we'll click Einstein setup, and you'll just want to turn it on. This gives you access to prompt builder as well as Einstein Copilot. Okay. All right, we got some folks from Canada, got some folks from Salt Lake City, London. Awesome. I'm from Detroit. I used to look into Canada. I used to look south into Canada. I could walk to Canada from my house if they let me on a bridge. It was that close. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to hop into the prompt builder. Bogota, awesome. Okay, cool. So we are going to hop into the prompt builder, and inside of the prompt builder, this is a tool that you're going to be using to essentially inject generative AI across Salesforce. So if this is the first time you're hearing about prompt builder, you're going to learn a lot about it today. Okay. So what we're going to do is generate what's called a prompt template. So a prompt template is really just like a category of prompts. Prompt builder is a tool that lets you interact with generative AI in a low code manner. And there are a variety of different scenarios and use cases. You can see 3 of these use cases that we have here. There's field generation for generating a single field. There's record summary for summarizing a record. There's also sales email that requires an additional license. We're not going to be doing that today. Allows you to generate a sales email with generative AI using data from your Salesforce CRM. And then the final one we have is the one we're actually going to be using. Now, this is the Flex prompt template. Now, this one is a template that is just really flexible. It allows you to, one, it can be used in a variety of different places like Flows and Apex, which you could also use other prompt templates for that too. But what's cool about this one is it could be exposed as a REST API, and really important, it allows you to essentially have multiple sources of data, whether it's a record or just like free text or a string. So in our case, we are going to start off by making a prompt template that takes in a case records data, right? And what we're going to want to do is take in that data, and we're going to want to use the data from the record and then just use that information to create a summary and then also try and categorize the case if we can. All right. So I'm going to take a quick look at the comments here. I got a question. Hey, I'm an admin. How can I train on Einstein through Trailhead? The best way to do it, if by train you mean just like test it out and learn, this quick start for prompt builder. Just hop into Trailhead, quick start prompt builder, you'll find it. So definitely check that out. Highly recommend this trail. If for no other reason than to get access to the org. The content itself is great though. Okay, so let's get started. Let's build out our prompt. Now, I am going to call this prompt, we need to give it a name. I'm going to call this summarize, classify, case. and take the default API name and just give it a quick description. And the next thing I'm going to do is just define my sources. So I'm going to call it case. My API name will be called my case. And the object that we want to use is an object, a Salesforce object, a record. We could also have free text. That would be a string, but we're going to use an object. And the object we want to use is a case object. Okay. So this is our baseline configuration, right? This is our configuration screen. The next thing we're going to want to do is actually build out our prompt template. Now, if you've ever used something like OpenAI, ChatGPT, you know that when you interact with generative AI, you're just typing to it. Prompt Builder works very similar. It's not quite a chat, but you're going to use, natural language to ask for what you want. So in our case, I'm going to just go ahead and paste in our prompt template. We can talk a little bit about it. Okay. So I'm going to paste this in. And so for my particular prompt template, what my goal is going to be to essentially give the generative AI model a role. So I'm going to say and give it some context. So essentially my prompt says, hey, you work for a company that services mechanical, electronical, and electrical forms of hardware, which is the type of data that you see in the case objects in this Einstein org. Your job is to categorize by type and case reason, and also create a summary. Now, what I do, because the case type and the case reason are pickless fields, is that I specify which values the AI can give me. I also specify which values it can give me for the case reason, because it's a pickless field. There's only specific values that we want it to output. I also supply it with information from the case. So one of the benefits to using prompt template over some other AI solution is that it's embedded in Salesforce, which means that you just have access to your Salesforce information. You can use it inside of your prompts without any additional configuration or integration. And so I have here the case details where I'm showing the priority, and you can see the priority. You can see my input here. This is actually a field from our record. And if I wanted to inject this, there are kind of two ways to do it. The fastest way is just to go to the resource picker and then pick your resource. So in my case, I'm looking for my object. It's always going to have like this little pink icon here. And then I'm just going to search for the priority. And it inserts it just like that. The alternative is to use the, what's the word for this? This particular format, it kind of escapes me what it's called, but you can also just kind of input it in this way, and it'll resolve to an input too. So that's another way to do it. The next thing that we're going to do is just tell the prompt template that we need to actually how we want our output to come out. So this is one of the challenges of this particular scenario. If you want to output multiple different types of information, you need to have some type of standard format. Now, one great standard format to output information and data is just JSON. So we specify that we want to return valid JSON and nothing but JSON. And we provide it with an example of some JSON so that the model has an idea what we want to do. This is called single prompt, single shot prompting. Something I learned from Mo, who's on my team. Okay, cool. So now let's take a look at how this works. So to test this out, you type in object ID or object name or field, whatever you use to identify it. And then you click save and preview. Now this is going to send our data to the model. And on the left, we have what was actually sent. So you see the information from my prompt, but you also see some information from the record. So here's the subject. There was no description. and we have some case comments, like a related list of case comments. So we see all of that here, and we see our response. So we can see that we got valid JSON from our model. It was able to give us a case type. It was able to give us a case reason, and it was also able to give us a summary. Global variable, I think someone just gave me the name of what that particular syntax is called. Is it global variable? It might be. Cool. So we have our prompt template here. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is just actually activate this prompt template, because we know it works, but we can't actually use it until we activate it. It's kind of like a flow in that sense. So we're going to go ahead and activate our case summary. So now we can use this inside of a flow. We can use this inside of Apex. We can use this in a variety of different ways. Okay, cool. So our next step is going to be to actually build a flow that allows us to use this. So we're going to hop back into setup because we have our prompt template here. And we're just going to build a flow. We're going to go to flows. I'm just going to create a new flow here. Okay. And we are going to start from scratch. Now, there are a variety of different ways we could approach this problem. We could build a record triggered flow that checks to see when a case is created or when a case is updated, or both, but probably one or the other, to see whether or not a case has a quick summary already and has a label and a reason already. And then if it's missing any one of those values, we could execute our prompt on the record and then get the response and then populate the fields. We could have an auto launch flow, right? And then put it inside of a button or what have you. We could do a lot of different things. In our case, let's try something different. Let's go ahead and create a screen flow. So we are going to create a screen flow here. And for this particular screen flow, we want to tie it to a custom action that we can put on our Lightning record page. So that's how we're going to approach the problem for today's codeLive. So the first thing we're going to want to do is just create a record ID. Okay. We're going to create a record ID resource. We're going to create a variable. Let's just call it record ID. This is going to be text. And it will not have a default value, but it will be available for input. Okay, so we have our record ID. The next thing we're going to want to do is just go ahead and actually get a record based on that ID. So we'll create a get records field here. Let's say get case record. This is going to be a case. Make this a little bit bigger. This is going to be a case. And the only condition that we're looking for is that the ID equals our record ID. And we're only going to get the first record, and we'll store all the fields. So this gets us our record. The next thing we're going to want to do is actually use our prompt template. So how do you do that? Well, this is going to be an action. In our case, we can just search for it. I believe we called it summarize classify case. So if we type it in here, it shows up. and I'll just call this summarize case LLM. Use the default API. Now this is a new type of action inside of Salesforce. This is a prompt template action. And when you have a flex template, a field generation template, the other different types of templates, you can use those inside of a flow. So what we're going to do is just pass it in a case, and we're going to just use the case that we are getting from our get case record here. Okay. And we pass that in here. The next thing we're going to want to do is actually update our case. Okay. So let's go ahead and try that. We're going to update our record. I'm going to take a quick look in the chat here, see if I have any questions. No questions so far. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and update the case. So let's just call this update case, right? And what we want to do is just take the record that we have. We want to actually kind of specify. We're going to specify our case. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for a record. We're going to update the record that matches our record ID. Okay. So this just makes sure that we're updating the right record, and we want to set our fields. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing we want to do is set the quick summary. And let's see. Here we have our outputs from our summarize LLM case. Here it's JSON. We're going to go look, and we have our prompt response. And here's our first problem. So we have the prompt response, but if you remember from when we were actually building the prompt template, and we'll take a look at, actually, let's take a look at this, right? The prompt response is the entire JSON. It's the entire little blob here. And so this would not be just the quick summary. It'd be everything. And it might be useful to actually take a look. Let's take a look and see what happens. So we're going to add a screen, and I'll just call this update case quick summary. And we will add just, let's add a component so that we can see, we can actually see what we have here. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to call this update status here. Could probably have a better name here, but update status works, I believe. It's fine. And let's take a look. We can, what should we update here? Actually, it might be useful to just see what the output of the prompt response looks like inside of a flow at this state. So we're just going to click done here, and we're just going to say, yeah, this looks good. Let me turn off this particular little app here so I can click into my box. This is our prompt response. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save this flow. Summarize, classify, case screen. Save this. And while we're saving, I'm going to take a look at the chat. Okay. And what we're going to do today is we are going to go ahead. Let's just do a quick debug before we activate this. We're just going to look at this together to just to see what happens, right? So I'm going to grab this record ID here. I'm going to run it. I think I ran in a in rollback mode. So we can see our prompt response here. So this is the string that we're getting. And the thing is that it's very much just a string. It's just text, right? So if you look here on the debug details, and we look to see how we are setting how we're kind of setting our quick summary, you can see that instead of like setting like the actual summary value in our JSON, we're just setting the entire JSON. And that's because in the context of JSON, as it relates to like a prompt response, it's just text. It's just a string. Now, if you are using JSON with like a call out, like Flows is able to, you can help Flow actually parse the JSON so that it can use the individual fields inside of the JSON, which would mean being able to have a prompt response dot case type, a prompt response dot summary, a prompt response dot reason, right? But because this is just free text coming from prompt builder, we have to do that ourselves. And that's where Apex is going to come in. So for our next step, what we're going to do is build a relatively simple Apex action that's going to allow us to parse this JSON so that we can create individual fields and then use those fields to actually assign things in a record. So let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create an Apex class. We're going to call this case summary parser. Okay. Now, I actually already wrote this code, so I'm going to just drop it in. See here. Alrighty. So really quickly, this is just an invocable. This is just an Apex action. We have one invocable method here. It just is going to essentially take in a list of strings because it always has to be a list of something. And we're going to output a list of case summaries. Now, a case summary is just going to be an object that contains the same fields that are inside of our JSON. So we're going to have a string that's the case type, a string that's the reason, and a string that is the summary. Okay. And if you're curious to how this works, we're just iterating over each string that we get. We are deserializing it using JSON.deserialize. We're passing in the string, and then we're just passing in this case summary.class, and we are casting it as a case summary, and then adding it to a list of case summaries. That's an empty list when we first start. I'm going to link a GitHub repo when I finish the stream so you can see all of this code here. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and deploy this this class here to our org. All right, so this deploy was successful. Now, what we're going to do is we're just going to add this to our flow so that we can actually parse the response that we're getting from our prompt template. All right, let's hop back over. And we are going to click out of this debug session here. And let's go ahead and just do a quick refresh. So we're going to refresh here because we might need to refresh before Flows is aware of our new Apex action. So now what we're going to do is just add a new action. And we're going to look for our parse case summary Apex action here. And we'll just call this parse case summary. And we want to input in some values, right? So in our case, we are going to get the string from our previous step. We're going to get the string from the prompt builder prompt template. So we'll do that. And we're going to grab the prompt response. And this is going to essentially take that prompt response that we're getting from prompt builder. We're going to parse it. And now we should have access to a resource inside of Flows that allows us to essentially assign the values that exist within the prompt response. So we can get the reason, we can get the case type, we can get the case summary. These are going to be individual fields instead of being part of one big blob of text. So to actually make use of that, we're going to hop back into our update records element, and we're going to make some updates here. So we're going to, for our quick summary, instead of using the output from our prompt builder action, we're going to use the output from our Apex action, which is parse case summary. And as you can see here, we have different fields now. So we can set the quick summary to summary. We can set the type to type. So we'll do the same thing here to case type. And finally, we can set the case reason to case reason. So let's see here. To case reason. And now we actually have an output that allows us to, now we're actually able to update the case with the individual records. Now this is a really useful pattern for anything when you're using prompt builder or large language models outside of the context of like HTTP callout, where Flow will parse it for you. So small amount of code, but really, really powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to update the screen as well. And I'm going to change this to, let's see here. All right, let me close this app for now. I'm going to disable it forever. Okay, so we can say our prompt, our case type is going to be, let's see here, we can get our case type. We can say our case reason is going to be the case reason, and we can also see that the case summary is going to be the case summary. All right. Now let's save this once more. And we're going to just quickly do some debugging. Okay, just to make sure that it works. So we'll click debug. We're going to grab our record ID from the record that we're testing. And we'll click run. Okay. All right, fantastic. So we have our case type is electrical, it's installation related, and looking at the case data, this looks very, very consistent and correct. They mention installation, they also mention electrical wiring, and so these categorizations look correct, as does this case summary. So this looks great. And if we hop on over to the update records element inside of the debug details, we can actually see that we are actually passing in those values. So we can see the reason will be equal to installation. We can see that the reason that the type is electrical, and that we can see that the quick summary field is going to be this long description here, which is based on both the case title as well as the case comments that related list. So this works as expected, which is great. The last thing that we want to do is just use this. So variety of different ways to use it. I'm going to quickly create a custom action so that we can do it from the record, but you could make this a record trigger flow if you wanted to. You could do all types of things. Salesforce is a very flexible pattern after all. So I'm going to hop into the object manager. I'm going to go to my case object. And I am going to go to buttons, links, and actions. I'm going to create a new action. I want to use a flow. And let's see here. I think I should see summarize case, but I might have to refresh here. Let's see here. What did I call this? Summarize classify case. Let's see. Oh, I don't see my flow. I must be missing a step, but I don't quite remember what it was. Let's see here. Am I unable to, activate. Again, as with prompt builder and prompt templates, always remember to activate your flow when you actually want to use it. So let me go ahead, go back here. I'm going to do a quick refresh, and hopefully my flow will show up. There we go. We have our summarize classify case. Call this summarize case. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Someone caught that. Yeah. I forgot to activate it. It's something that I tend to do. I always forget to activate it. I don't know if anyone else like runs into that, but I'll like finish my flow. I'll debug it. I'll be like, this looks great. And then I'll go to use it and I'll be like, where's my flow? And it's because I forgot to click activate. So we have our custom action. I'm going to very quickly update our layout here so that we can use it. Okay, so it should be somewhere in actions. Here we go. So we have our actions. Let's grab this. Let's put this somewhere. Summarize actions. We're going to save it. Save our layout here. And hopefully, because this is a live demo, you never know, when we hop back into our case record, we will see summarize classify case somewhere. So we'll do a quick refresh. And okay, I don't really like this. So we have summarize classify case here inside of the feed. I believe this is related to the fact that I have like chatter or like the feed on for this particular object. Let me just go ahead and click. Let me go ahead and fix that actually. So I would like this button to be up here. So let's see if we can get that to work. So what I'm going to do is go back to setup. And since I have it here, I'm just going to go to feeds. I believe it's, let's see here. I think it's, which one is it? Feed tracking. So we're going to go to feed tracking and we're going to look for case. And I'm just going to turn this off for now. Okay, so I turned off the feed because the reason I'm doing this is because I have the feed on. So I have this thing here and I want summarize case to be over here. So I turned off the feed. So when I refresh, hopefully summarize case will be over here. So let's see if that happens. All right, great, cool. And it looks like I already ran this, but let's just make sure it works because we're kind of at time. I'm going to delete I'm going to go ahead and delete the summary. I'm going to reset the type. I'm going to reset all of this information. I want to click save, and moment of truth, I'm going to click the summarize case button, and ideally it will update the quick summary, the type, and the case reason. So let's do that. We're going to click summarize case. All right, we'll click finish. This should refresh the record, and it works. So what did we learn today? We learned how to use prompt builder to create structured output, JSON output. We did that here. Let's see here. Let's go find our prompt template. Let's go to prompt builder. So we learned how to use single shot prompting to show a large language model how to create a structured output. In our case, JSON. We learned how to use an Apex action, a relatively simple Apex action, Apex class to parse that JSON so that we could then return that structured information inside of a screenflow. And so using that combination of tools, flows, Apex, and prompt builder, we can now use generative AI to summarize and classify cases for us so that every case um, has a good summary that is consistent and well written and is also categorized well. Now, this is something you could traditionally do with predictive AI, but that requires a training set, that requires a lot of that can require time, that can require effort, it can require money. Um, this particular approach allows you to do it without any of those things, just the tools you have inside of Salesforce. Um, no training set required. Now, I have a few folks that are asking about where to get the Apex code. So I actually wrote an article on something very similar on the Salesforce blog. So if you go to the Salesforce blog, developer blog, let's see here, I actually have an article that has the code. Let me just go ahead and see if I can find it. It's been a minute. Here we go. So go to developer.salesforce.com/blogs and look for my blog on using prompt builder, flows, and Apex to summarize and classify cases. At the bottom, uh, toward the bottom of this article, you can actually copy the code, and then you can use it in your own project. You can use it as a basis for building something completely new, approaching a different use case, approaching a different object. Possibilities are really endless when it comes to generative AI. But this is just one thing that I wanted to do. One thing that I thought a problem that kind of spoke to a previous experience that I had that really I would say allowed me to use generative AI to solve a problem that I found to be particularly painful when I worked in support or managed a support team. Cool. So thank you so much for joining my first ever Code Live. I've really enjoyed having having you all here. I've really enjoyed seeing your questions, hearing where you're from. If you enjoyed, watching me build stuff on this channel, if you check out my live stream coming up on the 31st. I won't be building stuff, but I will be joined by two really awesome Salesforce employees to talk about updates to the Salesforce CLI, as well as Scratch or Snapshots, which is a really cool and highly requested tool. That's going to be on July 31st here on the Salesforce Developer YouTube channel. Whether you're on LinkedIn, you're on YouTube, I recommend that you sign up for that and attend. Otherwise, it has been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you all. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are. Thank you so much.